What's up, everyone? Welcome into another episode of DJMMA. Today, we'll be covering the upcoming pay-per-view UFC 285 in Las Vegas. Jon Jones makes his long-awaited return. He's fighting Ciryl Gane, the main event of UFC 285. It's a pretty loaded card. We're going to be breaking down some early leans and also talking about what's gone down the past couple of weeks. It's been a few weeks since DJ and I have done a show together. Unfortunately, my life's been a little bit of a shit show. I was down vacation in Mexico, and I had the full expectation to still be running shows, doing my Blackhawks coverage, covering golf. I mean, I'd rather do it there than in cold-ass Chicago. Day one in Mexico, I spill water on my laptop. Our whole plans go kaput. So I apologize for not having a show out the last couple of weeks, but we're back for a big pay-per-view this weekend, Saturday night, DJ. Before we get into all that, how you doing, my brother?
Great. Yeah, I'm super excited. I mean, the cards lately have been kind of, not the best. So it feels good. March finally here. I mean, the March month that we have for UFC events is actually like insane. Like I can even pull it up right here. Like Gane, Jones, Jan versus Marab, Edwards versus Usman 3, Vera versus Sandhagen. Like those are four main events that like I don't know the outcomes for any of them yet.
It's a much needed next couple of months for the UFC, it feels like, because ever since December, there's just been a lot going on, and I feel like not a lot of it has been positive. There's been a lot of main events getting scrapped and cancellations and some bad judging decisions. So it feels like, as a couple of UFC fans here, that it's much needed what's coming up these next couple of weeks. Banger after banger pay-per-view. And yeah, I'm excited to get into all the stuff for UFC 285 this week. But before we get into that, DJ, as I just referenced, it's been a couple of weeks since we've done the show. We haven't done one since UFC 284, which was a pretty good event in and alone of itself. Obviously, the main event was Islam Makhachev coming out victorious over Alexander Volkanovski. We'll get there in just 1 minute, but there were a couple of other fights that were part of that main card that I want to talk about first. DJ, in our final show before my vacation, we talked about Jack Della Maddalena versus Randy Rude Boy Brown, and both of us did have some concerns about, how Randy can move. Would that give Jack some issues? He's versed some lower level opponents and maybe some stationary targets that don't move as well as Randy Brown. I had a little more confidence in Jack Della Maddalena than you did, but I still didn't think he was going to faceplant Randy Rude Boy Brown in the way that he did. Undoubtedly an impressive performance. What was your takeaway from that fight? And are you a believer now in JDM?
No, yeah, for sure. That dude has hands. But no, I thought the way the fight started, Jack didn't really throw anything for like first 2 minutes, 3 minutes. He was kind of just slowly like, trotting forward, marching him down. He's very patient, very, very patient, I guess I would say. But no, he looked great. Randy Brown got knocked out. He got face planted and pretty badly. Randy Brown's a legit dude too. He's fought really, really tough UFC opponents in the past. So that's a big statement, especially now that he's in the top 15 now. So that's crazy that Jack's in the top 15 now. It's just only a couple fights in the UFC. So I'm really excited to see this man, move forward in his career, to start taking on some tougher opponents. I know he called out Vicente Luque. That'd be a barn burner. That'd be a banger of a fight. So yeah, I'm looking forward to his, what's to come for him. I think, probably in the next, 2-ish years, we can, possibly be talking about him fighting for a title one day.
I think it was obviously a big statement that Jack made, and I'm really interested to see if he gets that Vicente Luque fight or who they're going to go with next, because it's pretty clear cut that on the feet, this guy's absolutely lethal. Do they want to give him another striker? Do they want to give him a wrestler? Do they go the classic veteran route again, which we see oftentimes in the UFC? But no doubt about it, Jack Della Maddalena, a massive statement. And I think not only you, but a lot of people out there, if they had any questions about this kid's talent, he silenced all the doubters in that one. The co-main event of UFC 284, DJ, was a really good fight in alone of itself. And not a lot of people were talking about it up to the event. Not even a lot of people were talking about Islam and Volkanovski. The UFC is pretty brutal at kind of advertising this stuff. But Yair Rodriguez with just another incredible victory. His kicks, dude, I don't think anyone kicks like Yair Rodriguez, just pummeling Josh Emmett's body. And we know Josh Emmett's a tough motherfucker who late in fights, if you let him hang around, he can come back and win. Yair didn't even give them that opportunity. I think Yair's ceiling is higher than even we thought it was. What do you think, DJ?
Oh yeah, for sure. I thought that was an unbelievable performance. That was nearly perfect, honestly. I mean, he didn't take much damage at all. His kicks looked insane. He showed out too. Like if you were a first time comer, kind of watching that event, seeing someone like Yair is like kind of like, it's a big deal. It's someone that you want to see in the UFC, someone that's cool, like fast, athletic, kicks, everything. He has that whole, puzzle to be, pretty popular too, especially with the following in Mexico too as well. That's a very, very interesting fight, him and Volk. Volk obviously is very dominant in that division, and he showed that he is the best fighter in that division. But looking at Yair's performance against Josh Emmett, who's very tough and durable, he looked like he could, he may not be that big of an underdog going into that fight.
I liked one of the few things I've liked out of Dana White in the past several months is he, after the Islam and Volk fight, which we'll touch on here in just a second, he did come out and say he wants to see Volk fight Yair first. And I think that's the right decision because Yair has been so impressive and is deserving of that opportunity. Of all the guys in that weight class, Volk's beat them all. He's the one guy who Volk, still kind of has to prove himself against. Not that Volkanovski has much to prove because he fought Islam Makhachev, DJ, about as well as I think anyone on planet Earth could. I will, tip of the cap to you, brother. It was a nice payday before I headed out to Mexico, a full unit, $100 down on Islam Makhachev, but it didn't come without a few heart attacks, bro, because that 5th round, I was shaking in my boots, actually, to see Islam like gassed and on bottom. I'm like, what is going on right now? But what I wanted to ask you, I'm curious, and for all you listeners out there, let us know down below in the comment section, how did you have this fight judged? Because even at the end of it, there was still no doubt in my mind that, obviously they were in Perth. It was a little shaky. I would have preferred the fight not to go to a decision. But in my mind, in a perfect world where judges are fucking right and not douchebags, Islam clearly won that fight. You agree?
Yeah, I agree completely. I thought it was 48-47. I think Volk had the bigger moments in the rounds that he won. Maybe that's kind of why it kind of felt a little bit more even. Also, obviously this card's in Australia where Volkanovski's from. So the crowd, is getting into every single thing Volkanovski does right. Obviously the crowd is not so chirpy when Islam's doing something right. So I thought Islam performed a lot better on the feet than a lot of people thought he would. And I think Volkanovski performed a lot better on the ground than people thought he would. So both guys came prepared. Both guys came with a game plan to stop the other person's most dominant trait in fighting. So it was a really good fight. That's probably a fight that we're going to be talking about for some time. I'm excited for the rematch. If Volkanovski is able to defend his belt and Islam's able to defend his belt, I think Islam probably won't have a problem, but Volkanovski with Yair might have a problem. I don't know. We don't know. He's a little bit bigger too. I guess we're going to have to see what, happens in this next couple months, but I think them and Abu Dhabi rematching it in October, like they usually go in October, I think that'd be a really good main event to have there.
I definitely do think, again, assuming that Alexander Volkanovski is able to take care of business, that's one of those where if it goes, obviously this doesn't happen in the UFC, but if it goes 6 or 7 rounds, like who knows who comes out on top of that fight. It was just kind of crazy circumstances. And I thought you mentioning how Volkanovski fared way better on the ground than anyone thought. I think that that's kind of, to me, where complications in the UFC and figuring out who really won rounds. I still had Islam winning those rounds if he's backpacking him and holding Volk down, even though he's, landing those back punches and screaming, come on. Listen, Islam is going to backpack you. That's what he does. Sure, it was impressive that Volk was able to stay out of the chokes. I feel like that's kind of the tough spot in judging UFC, right? Is like, listen, this guy is clearly on his back. He's getting out controlled, but he's still landing damage. It's like a weird thing, I think, in UFC where it's like, and that's why the judging, I think, has to be more clear cut. It's because of situations like that where, sure, Islam had 3-4 minutes of control, and in my mind, that should win a fight. But at the same time, Volk was the one landing shots. I'm curious if you like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I haven't done, jiu-jitsu a lot of, in my lifetime that much. Like I did it for literally under a month. So, but it's a lot harder to get to the back position than it is to throw baby haymakers behind your back. So I feel like in that situation, you always have to kind of give it to the guy that's controlling the position, especially when you have someone's back and you have the body triangle too as well. That's a very, very dominant position where you're being close to finish if you just make one sudden movement. So yeah, Volk obviously defended everything very well, but at the end of the day, if you're throwing punches behind you, I think you're probably losing the fight.
And I do think maybe that was part of why some people thought Volkanovski was going to win. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
A lot of people had different scorecards out there. I thought it was clear cut that Islam won, but just an interesting thing in the sport of UFC and why I think there needs to be changes in the future to make things just a little bit more open for the fans and situations like that. But Islam Volkanovski, that's not a name. Islam Makhachev comes through for us at UFC 284, giving us a nice payday, DJ. Let's move on to the last couple of fight nights that we've seen. Nothing really too notable, but one that we have to talk about, and we're on the wrong end of it, unfortunately, is Erin Blachfield. God damn. Beating Jessica Andrade the way that she did. I mean, dude, watching Jessica Andrade come out in that fucking headdress, I would never want to fight her in literally a zillion years. And Erin Blachfield, what, 23, 24 years old, cool as a cucumber, goes out there, gets the job done, makes her tap. We knew, DJ, that Erin Blachfield was good. We knew that she had the skill set, but I think we both agreed it was just it felt like it was a little bit too early for her. She shut that shit down real fast. Erin Blachfield is a problem, brother.
Yeah, what surprised me the most was how comfortable she looked on the feet with Jessica Andrade. Someone like Jessica
Andrade.
They
were throwing. Sorry to interrupt. They were throwing. It was awesome. One of the best chick fights. I know it only went 2 rounds. One of the best chick fights I've seen in a while.
Yeah. She looked really good on the feet. I think she won round 1, and she looked good doing it. I mean, if you're going against Jessica Andrade, look what she just did to Lauren Murphy. Lauren Murphy has been, in the UFC for quite some time. She's been in the ringer. She's had a lot of pro fights, and Erin Blachfield hasn't had, over. She's probably at 13, 14 fights. I don't think she's at that high.
She's 11-1. She's had 12 fights.
11-1. That's unbelievable. And
sorry to interrupt again. The one fight that she lost came to Tracy Cortez. I watched that fight. No way in fuck Erin Blachfield lost that fight. No way.
Yeah. And Tracy Cortez is good too. That's not someone to be ashamed of losing to. She's a very, very dominant wrestler for the division that doesn't have a lot of wrestlers in it. I mean, you've seen Carla Esparza get a belt. I mean, that just shows how powerful wrestling is in the 115-pound division. That's why I think Tatiana Suarez is probably going to have no problem getting that belt wrapped around her waist towards the end of the year. I really think that. But yeah, no, the fight itself was unbelievable. Erin Blachfield looked insane. She's the real deal. I think she poses kind of a little bit of a matchup nightmare for Valentina, but at the same time, Valentina's Valentina, and I think obviously she'll probably be a favorite going into that fight, but I do think Erin Blachfield is capable of getting that fight to the ground and finishing Valentina at the same time. So that's a very interesting one to kind of look, to the horizon towards if she's able to defend her belt this weekend against Alexa. But yeah, that's something I'm definitely interested in watching next.
Erin Blachfield, born May 4th, 1999, 23 years old.
99, wow.
Insane. Truly earned the nickname Cold-Blooded.
Wow.
Absolutely massive performance over Jessica Andrade. DJ, you just mentioned Tatiana Suarez, who after we kind of got banged a little bit by the Charles Johnson decision, we had him parlayed with Tatiana Suarez, which unfortunately for our listeners following out there, we apologize to all you guys. I promise this is just what happens in the UFC. Sometimes you get banged by the judges. We don't like it as much as you do. But Tatiana Suarez, fortunately, we doubled down on her a little bit to get the job done by finish, which is something we normally don't like to do. That's usually where we end up in bad news bears on a night. But we doubled down on Tatiana Suarez to get the job done by decision. She ultimately ended up getting it done in the second round, but I think she definitely gave us a few more scares than we would have liked. I mean, you like to see the final outcome. She gets the victory by submission, no harm, no foul, but credit to Montana De La Rosa for hanging in there and being tough.
Yeah, no, she looked good. I mean, she's a big girl for the division. Tatiana Suarez did look smaller, and usually she looks bigger than all the girls she's facing, usually at 115. So it was weird to see her struggle like that. I've never seen Tatiana struggle like that. Maybe a little bit in the Nina Ansaroff fight, her last fight before she took that hiatus. But Yeah, no, she was struggling to get those takedowns. I'm really glad she finally got it to the ground. She even threw that guillotine in. Her boyfriend's Patchy Mix, Bellator fighter, who's like, that's his specialty. So it was kind of cool to see her get it done like that. But yeah, no, it was a really big statement. I think her coming back to 115 is going to be a big, big problem for the rest of the division. I do see her being the champion at the end of the year. I really do. Hopefully she gets the fights that will line her up to get a championship fight towards the end of the year. That's kind of the only question in my mind. But later on this year, early on next year, I really do feel like she's going to be fighting for her title. And if it's against Wei Li, if it's against Rose, if it's against Carla, she's already beat Carla. I mean, she's going to dominate. I really think so.
I probably should have asked you this off air, but why did Tatiana Suarez disappear for 3 years?
Yeah, she had like a lot of health complications. She grew up. When she grew up, she had cancer, so she had to stop wrestling, and she was like going to go to the Olympics and all this stuff. Like, she's a really, really good wrestler, but I think she had some health complications. I'm not sure. I think she was something with her neck, from what I thought. I understand. I think it had something to do with her neck, but yeah, she wasn't able to fight. It was completely out of her control. She's been wanting to fight this entire time, but now she's back, so I'm happy to see her back healthy. And she looked good. She had a dominant win. She didn't lose a second of that fight, in my opinion. So, I mean, that's saying a lot right there.
Well, good to see Tatiana Suarez back and get a victory in her first performance. Going to be very interesting to see who the UFC elects to give her next down at 115. As you mentioned, this is a one-off of her fighting at 125. So probably not going to have, thinking she's probably not going to have as many struggles fighting at 115, given that her wrestling should take over with smaller fighters, but we'll see what ends up happening with Tatiana Suarez in the future. DJ, that takes us to the meat and potatoes here as we wrap up this research episode. Moving on to UFC 285. Before we get into any gambling stuff whatsoever, obviously, your boy Jon Jones is back this weekend. I know you're pumped for that, but talk to me about some of the other fights that you are excited to see on this week's card, not from a betting standpoint, but just as a fan.
Yeah, no, just as a fan, Ian Gary's return. Obviously, he's probably the next face of Ireland. So seeing him on the early prelims is very, very weird to me. Derek Brunson versus Duplessis. Duplessis just beat Darren Till. He looked really good doing it. That's going to be an interesting fight because both those guys get tired very early. So I wonder how that fight's going to end. Cody Garbrandt's returning against a guy that he could actually beat. If he keeps it under control and he doesn't do anything stupid, I do think he could win that fight. He's coming off 3 losses. I think Cody's coming off, let me check. I want to say 3 or 4 losses. Oh no, he's coming off 2 losses. I forgot he knocked out a Sunsow, but his last 6, he's 1-5. So it's been
that a Sunsow knockout though was one of the best things I've ever seen in my life. Cool,
but then he ruins it by doing this stupid shit and going on a 1-5 streak right now. So I mean, he's better than that. I know he's better than that. So he should win that fight. I hope he does, but we never know with him. Bo Nickel, obviously, like a very, very dominant wrestler, 3-time national champion, 3-time All-American, Hodge Trophy winner, Big Ten Athlete of the Year, not Wrestling Athlete of the Year, Big Ten Athlete of the Year. He's a really, really big name, and we're going to be saying his name a lot moving forward. I truly, I know this sounds absolutely insane, but if you put him in there right now with Alex Pereira, or Israel Adesanya, I'll say Izzy too, he will beat them handily. He will dominate them. He will control them the entire fight, and they will not stand a chance. I promise you that. This man is legit. He will be the 185-pound champion. He might even be the 205-pound champion by the end of his career. Truly, full in my heart, believe that. That dude did some crazy things in wrestling, and that work ethic, that being in those stadiums with 16,000 people, he's prepared for this moment. And I really do think he's going to show out this weekend. And I don't see that fight going longer than a half a round. I really don't. Jamie Pickett is in there to take a beating. He's the sacrificial lamb. He is not going to make it out of round 1. I promise you that. Gamrot's coming back. Gamrot's also coming off that loss to Beneil, where he did not look good, and he was a betting favorite going into that fight. He should have the grappling advantage, a very, very strong grappling advantage against Jalen Turner. Jalen Turner's huge for that division. He walks around at 6'3", 155 pounds. I do not know how that man makes weight. But it will be interesting seeing his cardio get tested this fight around. Obviously, him being that big, obviously he's going to have some cardiovascular issues. So Gamrot's going to be able to push that pace. So I'm interested in seeing kind of how Jalen Turner reacts there. Shavkat returns. Obviously, probably one of the most dominant fighters in the UFC right now, other than him and Hamzat. But one of those guys are gonna be champion one day. It's inevitable, him or Hamzat. So that's a really interesting fight. Jeff Neal's a really, really tough test for him. I know the betting odds say it's minus 500 Shavkat, but that should be a little bit closer than that. Jeff Neal is legit. He's knocked out really good guys, and he's fought really good guys. So I don't know, but if Wonder Boy can beat Jeff Neal, then I think obviously, or Neil Magny, I think probably Shavkat will probably win that fight. But Valentino, Alexa Grasso, not interested in this fight at all. I think Valentina kind of beats the shit out of Alex Grasso. It's kind of sad because Alex Grasso is pretty good and she's worked her way to this title fight and she's earned it. So, yeah, it's just unfortunate that she has to fight Valentina. If it was like Erin Blanchfield is a champion right now, I'd give her a little bit, more of a chance to win. But I just think that's a matchup nightmare for her. And then last but not least, we have Jon Jones and Ciryl Gane. Jon Jones was returning after a 3-year layoff where he was arguably the best fighter of all time, and I still think he is the best fighter of all time. It's going to be very interesting to see how he deals with Ciryl Gane's, movement, his speed. Jon looked a little slow on that pad video. I don't know if you saw that.
I did not.
He looked pretty slow. I'm not gonna lie. He looked fat too. So I don't I don't know. Jon, he better. He said he's not cutting weight too. Oh, go ahead.
What do you think, Jon? What do you think Jon weighs in at?
Right now?
Yeah.
He's big. He's probably 255, my guess. He's probably 255, 250, around 245, in that 10-pound range. And Ciryl walks around at, I think, 247 around there. So he's like a very agile, quick-moving heavyweight. He's big for the division too. He's like 6'5". So, and Jon struggled with people that are big like that. So I mean, it's going to be an interesting fight. I think it's going to be a lot closer than people. Oh, I don't know. The odds do have it close, so it's going to be close. But I don't know, man. The more I think about it, I think Ciryl Gane might win this fight.
Dude, we'll get into that in just a second, but you rattling off 7 fights there about what we're legitimately excited to see. I mean, feels like this is the start of a fucking incredible run for the UFC, and I couldn't be more excited. Jon Jones, Ciryl Gane, like plus money for Ciryl Gane. I tweeted this earlier. Betting against Jon Jones feels like an imbecile decision. Like, it's betting against prime Tom Brady and the Patriots. It's betting against Nick Saban in Alabama. If Jon Jones wins, you'll look in the mirror and fucking give your head a shake because it's just not a good decision. But at the same time, Ciryl Gane, we've talked about it before. It feels like he's the toughest test possible for Jon Jones to come back to, especially at heavyweight. He moves like a 170-pounder. He can kick. He's shifty. It's going to be a tough test for Jon Jones. Are we doubting, arguably the best fighter in UFC history? No, I think we do still believe that in Jon's talents. It just feels like this is such a tough ask for him after a 3-year layover. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think it's stylistically probably the worst matchup for him to come back to. I think a rangy guy that keeps his distance, just like Jon, he's really good at, but don't get me wrong, but I think Cyryl's faster. I think his strikes are a little bit more cleaner and crisper. Although obviously Jon has the very dominant grappling and wrestling advantage, I don't think necessarily he can get it to the ground. I think Gane is very athletic, and he's athletic enough to defend those takedowns. It's kind of like it's the level tester. I remember when Khabib tried to take down McGregor, it was like level 1, and then he turned it into level 2. Then he turned it into level 3 by picking his leg, and then it was just like it's levels to wrestling. So if Jon can make those exchanges last a little bit longer, he'll get him down. He will. It's just making them last longer, and Ciryl knows he has to get away, keep distance. I watched the countdown. He's literally just focusing on getting away from him, keeping distance, and keeping that fight standing. So that's a very interesting, very, very interesting matchup. Obviously, Jon has the grappling advantage. I think Gane has the striking advantage. Jon's takedown percentage after 2016, listen to this, is 29%. Before 2016, it was like 50, like 8%, 60%, something like that. So that's just something to think about. He wasn't able to take down Dominic Reyes that well. I think he took him down once, but Dom got right back up to his feet. He took Gustafsson down. He beat the shit out of Gustafsson. Big whoop. I'm not that impressed. Gustafsson looks like shit his last couple of fights. Before that, Thiago Santos wasn't able to take him down. That fight stood standing. He wasn't able to take him down either with a torn ACL. So I don't know. I just think his takedowns, they were a little bit better early on. I think the sport's evolved a lot since he was taking down people. So I will say that people are using the cage a little bit better now. People are, learning actually wrestling with actual wrestlers nowadays to improve their wrestling. Back in the day, it was like you just find a guy that you think knows how to wrestle and you try to wrestle him. But now it's a little bit different. People actually have, they bring out actual wrestlers to their camps, and if Gane didn't bring out a wrestler to his camp, he's a moron. I mean, I can't see him not doing that. So, I mean,
it would be dumber than Darren Till not training with Hamzat Chimaev for his fight against Dricus du Plessis. Just
dumb as that.
Not to change the subject here, but it's just like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, it wouldn't make any sense. I mean, he's the best fighter of all time, and he knows that. So, yeah, no, it's a very interesting fight. I mean, I'm going to wait to bet on it. Probably if I do take the Gane line, I'm taking it. I'm not betting on Jon. I'm not going to bet on Jon. I think betting on the over would be safe. I think taking Gane probably the day of would probably be safe, just because I think Jon's going to probably swell to about minus 200-ish range, just because his name alone, the promotion and the marketing behind Jon. So it's a very interesting fight. I'm very, very, very excited.
The potatoes, and the potatoes are going to bet on Jon Jones. People that don't know anything about the UFC are going to bet on Jon Jones.
Well, I would too. I mean, I still kind of want to bet on Jon Jones because I love the man so much. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's probably the smartest decision.
Absolutely. And I think if you are planning to bet Ciryl Gane, I don't see that number getting worse. And I only see that number getting better closer to the fight. So if you're out there thinking about betting on Ciryl Gane, maybe just be patient for a couple of days and wait to see how that line moves. But I definitely think, in a nutshell, this is kind of like a really interesting debate about the UFC just in this fight alone, because Jon Jones, a lot of people consider him as the GOAT of the UFC, but make no mistake about it, the UFC is way different than it was even when Jon Jones last fought. The UFC is way different, way deeper. People are starting to evolve their games. People are coming up interested in this sport. That wasn't really a thing in, the early 2010s. It's different now, and the sport has revolutionized. So it's going to be very fascinating to see if Jon Jones can recapture that glory that we all remember him for, or if it's a new era and not even just Ciryl Gane winning, but the newcomers proving that the sport's different and, it's only getting better and better. So I'm very intrigued to see what's going to happen in that main event. I think the rest of the world is as well. Not sure if we're going to have any action on it at this point. We'll see what happens. DJ, going through your comment, big dog.
Yeah, I do think the things that made Jon special back in the day, I think they're not as special anymore. I think they're a lot more common now. Flying knees, spinning elbows, elbows alone. Like all those things were very special back then because no one was doing them. Oblique kicks, like all these things. They're very common now. So I don't know if his game is going to excel as much as it used to just based on that alone. It's like those things aren't special anymore. Those things are – the top guys are doing those things now. They're all capable of doing them. So it's going to be very interesting to kind of see. Sorry, I just want to throw that out there.
No, great point. Absolutely. I love it, dog. Before we get on out of here, let's talk about some of our early looks for UFC 285. And by the way, for everyone out there, if you're still watching at this point in the show, we really appreciate your support. Make sure to go down below, smash the like button for us, and comment as to some of your early looks for UFC 285. We always want to know what the fans are thinking, what you're thinking out there, what you're liking. Go and comment down below as to some of the early bets you're thinking of tailing for UFC 285. But DJ, let's get into it. What are you looking at here as we're 5 days away now from UFC 285 at the T-Mobile Center in Vegas? It's a great card, as we've already dissected. What are kind of your early looks as of right now?
Yeah, so definitely want to get some type of action on Bo Nickel just because that's a guaranteed win no matter what. So I definitely want to see the props for that one. I want to see him by finish. So I'm estimating that's probably going to be around minus 900 to about minus 1,000. So you definitely have to parlay that with something to get some cheddar. So at the same time, I'm also thinking about parlaying the over for Jon Jones and Ciryl Gane fight. I do think that fight's going to go a little bit longer. I'm not going to go the 4.5 because that's a lot, but over like 1.5, 2.5 is something I'm definitely interested in peeking at. So that line hasn't dropped yet, so I don't know what it is, but I'm estimating it's probably be right around minus 400, minus 450 area. So parlaying that together, we'll get it down a little bit. I do think Dricus du Plessis is also a pretty heavy favorite going into this weekend's fight against Derek Brunson. I think he'll probably easily get the job done. Derek's a little bit older now. He gasses out a lot. So does Dricus, though, but I think Dricus is just a much bigger, more dominant, fighter. He looked really good against Darren Till, and I have a feeling he's going to look really good against Derek Brunson too as well. Derek Brunson also has, stated multiple times that he's getting near the end of his career. He knows he's not on a title run anymore. So I don't know why he's taking this fight. I don't think it really makes much sense for him. But yeah, I like Drikius too. So just parlaying those three together is definitely going to get probably even money close to there, hopefully. So that's kind of the first parlay I'm kind of looking at. I know it's 3 legs, which is something that we don't usually do, but if Bo Nickel is one of those legs, I honestly don't even count it. So I'm going to count it as a 2-leg parlay, even though it is a 3-leg parlay. I'm kind of looking at Viviane Araujo against Amanda Ribas. Amanda Ribas did get a split decision her last time out. Granted, she is getting a little bit better on the feet, but I think Viviane's a little bit sharper, a little bit quicker. And I don't think this fight necessarily hits the ground. I think Amanda Ribas kind of fallen in love with her hands a little bit too much. And I know she is a very good ground grappler. So if she gets the fight to the ground, I do think it's kind of in her world. But if that fight stays standing for 3 rounds, kind of like her last couple of fights have been, I do think Viviane wins that fight. So she's at plus 110, I believe, right now. I can't remember, but yeah, I think that's good value there. I think she does win the fight more than 50% of the time. So I do think that's good value. Those are all I have so far. Obviously, we talked about the Gane fight a little bit. I'm definitely waiting on that. If Jon gets to minus like 200, 220, I think I'm definitely going to throw a little something on Gane. It won't be anything crazy, but I like the over in that fight a little bit too. Over 4.5 is at minus 140. I do think no one's finishing, each other in this fight. I do think the first couple of rounds are going to be really telling. I think they're going to be feeling out rounds. I don't think either guy is going to kind of storm out the gate trying to, knock each other's heads off. Both very patient fighters, both really use their footwork well. So I like the over in that fight so far. But yeah, that's all I'm thinking so far. Nothing official, but that's kind of what's on my mind right now.
Still waiting, of course, for a couple of these lines to drop. I mean, we're taking Bo Nickel minus 50. We're not taking Bo Nickel straight up. You got to find a way to do something to get that number down. So we're waiting to see what Bo Nickel is going to be potentially by finish. I did one of the things I wanted to bring up. It feels like this is kind of how I felt about Drikius versus Darren Till as well. Maybe I'm wrong here, DJ. This minus 230 isn't anything to bat an eye at, but I feel like that's still great value on Drikius. Like Derek Brunson stinks. I'm sorry, Derek Brunson stinks. He's old. He beat Darren Till, which says nothing. Darren Till, I don't think takes his fucking career seriously. I don't know what he was trying to do in preparation for the fight against Drikius. Sure, Darren Till lost to Derek Brunson. I still have not been impressed by Derek Brunson. I mean, he looked good for 3 minutes against Jared Cannonier. I think minus 230 is a little bit of a gift. I think that's a gift.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think so too. I think minus 300 kind of. I'm surprised it's not that high, actually, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, minus 220, it's a little chalky, but at the same time, I think that's great value. I really do. Derek Brunson's old, dude. He's like 38, 39 and a kind of a little bit lighter division. I mean, 185 is obviously not super big, but I mean, we don't see a lot of 185ers stick around past their 40s, especially as a wrestler. A grueling, top pressure game, up and down level changes. That's very taxing on your knees and all that. I just think he's too old. He's too old for this shit anymore. And I think Drikius is in his prime. He's
one of the biggest dudes I've ever seen.
That dude is a sculpture. That dude is first team all body. That dude is massive. He is a big dude. So I mean, yeah, I think he probably will get the job done. I think he finishes him. I actually do think he finishes Derek Brunson. I really do.
I do as well. I don't think. I mean, maybe Derek Brunson, if Drikius gasses himself, maybe he can lay on top for 10 minutes. That's the only path to victory I see for Derek Brunson, is Drikius gasses himself and then he just lays on top. Other than that, if Drikius can keep his cardio fine, I don't see any way he loses this fight.
No, I agree. I agree completely. I think that's a gift. That line is a gift.
All right. Well, I think that takes care of our early looks here for UFC 285. As I just mentioned, we're going to wait to see some of these final lines come out here in the next couple of days, and we'll have a show later on this week to talk about our final picks. Hopefully for everyone out there who's still watching, we'll be able to make you some cheddar this week. I know it's been a little bit of a sluggish last couple of weeks during the UFC fight nights, but hey, if we're coming and getting a profit on the biggest pay-per-views, and we're still up on the year if you've been tailing every bet that we have. So as always, we appreciate all the support. If you're still here, go and smash the like button down below. Comment again as to your early looks for UFC 285. And we're looking forward to talking to you all again later on this week for our final bet show. DJ, any final thoughts before we get on out of here? I know you're just pumped for this event, and I'm sure to see Jon Bones Jones back in action, baby.
Yeah, I mean, I ordered my Jon Jones shirt. It's not going to get here in time, so I'm a little sad about that. But I'm so excited to see my man back in action. I really hope he gets a W. I mean, even if we are on the other side of it, I just hope he does well. That's all.
All right, folks, I think that's going to do it here for our research show for UFC 285. We'll catch you next time.